Good morning, everybody. Glad to be back with you at the ArmorCast, and specifically to be able to have Cameron Brown with us this morning. I'm Paul Say, and we just like to talk about things that impact business and how to better grow your business as a small business owner, as an entrepreneur, and specifically with marketing and different strategies. But we also love to talk about all kinds of other things too in the process, because that's what human beings, do.
That's right.
So, but Cameron and I have been friends and have had some business interactions, over almost 2 decades. I think over 15 years. And
Yep.
so it's really cool to be able to have this type of opportunity together. So thanks for making some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah, cool. And Cameron is a married man, family guy, and
Sorry, ladies.
yeah, off the market. But 3 boys, and love for you to just kind of share a little bit of your background from even back to the state days and kind of some education stuff, just to help us get to know each other before we kind of move into some other topics.
For sure. So I won't go all the way back, but I am from Mississippi originally, as you know.
Yep.
Born in Mississippi, raised there, and in Florida, and then back to
Light town?
No light town.
No light town.
Well, we did have a light for a period of time, and then it got reduced to a flashing light, and then it just realized
do we really need that?
We don't need that.
That's
actually.
awesome.
But we have picked up a Dollar General in the last few years, which I think is pretty normal nowadays.
Dollar General's got it figured out in those rural
I'll
areas.
tell you what, I still drive around a lot for what I do during the day, and I never get concerned about like not being able to get something when I need it, because I'm like, just go a little bit further. There's going to be a Dollar General. It doesn't matter what kind of road you're on. There's going to be one.
Yeah. Cow pasture. Dollar General.
Cow pasture, Dollar General, more cow pasture. So yeah, born in Mississippi. I did go to Mississippi State. I originally, and I tell people this, I originally went to school for electrical engineering. It was just because I was good at math. I was like most dudes. I was 17, 18 years old trying to make a decision on what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which is kind of stupid when you think about it.
Really hard to do that.
That's a nicer way of saying it. Y'all may have to filter me a little bit. Paul has always been a great mentor and friend of mine and example in so many ways, not the least of which is being polished. And I'm from Mississippi, so I'm still working on it. But I tend to hear things the same time as everybody else does when it comes out of my mouth, but I'm getting better about being able to package that. So anyways, I thought it was stupid to make a decision. I went into engineering, and thankfully I co-opted a couple of semesters and realized what I would be doing for 40 years, and I didn't want to do that. So I changed my major one semester short of graduating. Actually ended up going into business management, because at that point I had started helping open some restaurants. Really enjoyed that process of starting business, and that particular industry at that time in my life I really enjoyed, because I felt like I was throwing a party every night. Whether people eating or at the bar or whatever. And stayed in that industry for 4 or 5 years, opened 4 restaurants, ran another one. That took me up to Memphis, which is where you and I think we actually met in Starkville originally.
Yeah.
But we met through a mutual friend and acquaintance that I went to school with. And then when I was in Memphis, we kind of reconnected and started doing some business together. That's actually what brought me over to Chattanooga.
That's right. Yeah.
And can't even tell you how much that changed my life and how grateful I am for the role that you played there. Kind of took me out of a rut into actually starting to learn what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. And I've been here in Chattanooga since 2006, so almost 17 years, 16 and a half years now. And I've always been in some type. I got out of the restaurant industry, got into sales, advertising sales, then I got into the health club industry, stayed in that environment for a while, probably 5 years.
Interestingly enough, Robert, our media guy, spent a lot of time in the health club industry too.
Nice. Yeah, it was fun. And I'm actually back to the same club that I used to work at now.
Oh, okay.
And it's been really enjoyable. If my legs might not come out of this crossed position today because I was there this morning, and it was pretty tough. JP, he put a program together for me. He basically looks like Captain America. And
times 10, the guy's a monster.
Yeah, and I'm dumb enough to listen to do this many of these. I'm like, I don't want to look like you, buddy. I just want to be healthy.
Yeah.
So anyways, was in logistics for a number of years on the sales side of the brokerage, which is a big industry here in Chattanooga, obviously for those that are from this area. And then moved into the exteriors world, right. Gutters specifically, and helped build a small business. I actually worked with more of a national brand, right. Based out of Atlanta. Quite frankly, and I won't mention their name, but quite frankly, I would if you were sitting here in person. They were doing some things that were just kind of shady, just kind of low integrity type business model, and I became aware of that, and it just doesn't jibe with me. Right. So I left there. I was like, didn't really want to be a part of it, didn't at all want to be a part of that. And linked up with one of our installers that was feeling the same way, having the same experience, and so he was like, well, I'm good at installing, you're good at selling. Why don't we have our own business? And technically it was his. I just ran it. I was kind of the face of it. And we built, over a 3-year period, we expanded business from here in Chattanooga to North Georgia to Knoxville, Crossville, Nashville. I mean, all over Middle and East Tennessee and North Georgia. Pretty big footprint for a small company. We ended up at one point having 4 install crews. Had another salesman at one point for a little while. But it was mostly me on the roads. And I enjoyed it. I love being in front of people. I love connecting with people and filling a need, and made good money. But I told my wife, I was like, this is all great. And we built that company in 3 years, we took it to like 1.2 million in revenue, which is not too shabby for just an idea.
Especially for smaller ticket items. Gutters are, not the biggest.
Yeah, we were doing some decent volume, and we had fair pricing. It's not like we were ripping people off,
right.
But the one thing I knew is I didn't own it, and if it ever went sideways, I went to zero pretty quickly. And unfortunately, that's kind of what happened. The gentleman that was the technical owner just kind of decided he wanted to move further away and start doing something different. And I was in a spot where I had to start getting creative. And thankfully, I had created a lot of friendships and partnerships in the contracting world throughout those years. Yeah. Strong network of individuals and companies. And so I decided to start my own brand, Free Agency Home Services. I can plug myself on here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, Armor does half my stuff anyway. So Free Agency Home Services. And really what it was is just that. It was essentially a shell company, which is like, hey, I've got a gutter crew, I've got a landscaping crew, I've got a deck crew, fence crew, whatever. And I was just the guy that was interacting with the customer, with the homeowner, creating a better experience there than in a lot of cases people have with their contractors directly. Yeah. You guys at Armor have done an amazing job with that, where y'all create a great experience for the homeowner and for the customer, and they don't have to worry about, contractors, installers are really good at what they do. Right. And sometimes it's best that they just do that,
Stay in their lane.
Stay in your lane. Yep. Exactly. And so on a much smaller scale than what y'all have created, that's essentially what I was doing with that, and still have that company. My wife actually kind of created a DBA off of that. It's kind of within the home services umbrella. So she has Joyful Cleaning Co., which is a residential cleaning company. And for a little over a year now, and it's just ridiculous. It was literally just her and another girl. Now they have like 7 girls cleaning 7 days a week.
Yeah, they do great work.
It's crazy.
Yep.
And along the way, back in 2019, also started a podcast with some great friends of mine. It's called, our organization is Shepards of Men. Our podcast is called The Movement. It really just started as conversations that we were having among each other about where we saw just some deficits in male leadership and then the masculine role and it being watered down and all those kinds of things. And so, one of the guys suggested, we should record this and do a podcast. And, we're just all dumb enough to think, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So, and it kind of took off, and we had a lot of engagement, a lot of people wanting to go deeper with that. And it lended itself to creating what we call the Men Reforged program, which is a full-on men's coaching program. We also have live events, which are called high carbon experiences. We're about to have our next, I don't know when this will release, but February 11th, we'll have our next high carbon experience in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And it's a 15-day, like fully submersive, you're going to be a better dude when you leave, kind of thing. So, and it's been amazing. That's really where my passion is. Obviously the podcast is growing with that and all these different things. And we've been able to create this great Rolodex of other men in that space. So that's where a lot of my heart and passion is. And along the way, also just because I don't have enough things to do, I guess, work with National Federation of Independent Business, which is an advocacy group for small business. The voice of small business has been around for 80 years. Essentially fighting legislation that hurts small business. That's another thing that I've always been very passionate about. I grew up with a family of farmers and loggers and small business owners. Obviously, I've always been kind of in that entrepreneurial world. And so it's really, I knew I wasn't ever going to be a politician, but I wanted to do something to be involved, and I love it. So also throughout the day, I get to speak with small business owners, kind of solicit information from them on the things that are affecting them and the things that they're concerned about. And then also build a member base that allows us to go do the work and, have the resources to do the work that we need to do at the state level and the federal level. So all that's kind of all the career stuff. But I have 3 boys, 17, 7, and 4. They're all amazing, all different. If you have more than one kid, just awesome personalities, and I have an amazing wife. We've been married this year. This summer will be 10 years.
Wow.
Yep. So you were there, right?
I was there on the beach. The sweaty beach.
the wet T-shirt contest wedding.
It was hot.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So we did a wedding in July and on the beach in Florida, and nobody will ever forget it.
Nope.
So
I think Pastor Frank was like, let's go ahead and let's speed this up.
We were running a little late. We were going to start at 10. I think it ended up being closer to 11. And if any of y'all know, I mean, that's a big. In July, the humidity jumps significantly in that hour. So. But anyways, it was fantastic, and she's been a huge blessing. We met at church, and I chased her down in the parking lot, and we got married 3 months later.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So so that's me.
So Cameron, one of the things I've always appreciated about you is your kind of relentless pursuit of the things that you're passionate about. It's easy to get sidetracked because life is kind of a barrage of distractions sometimes. But you've always had a passion and a hunger for mentoring men, and so Shepards of Men, very, very cool program, and hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit more. And what I think has been, what I think you can bring to this conversation today is, we've talked about it before, kind of being a little bit of a mutt, we're both of us, kind of not just like, hey, grew up in a lawyer family, nothing wrong with that. Went to law school and I've practiced law.
Right.
So, there's some very important things with just that history and that lineage of understanding something very, very finite, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also, especially when it comes to business, something that's really helpful whenever you've experienced kind of the full gamut.
Yes.
And so, there's one of our suppliers that is our primary supplier here, and they've brought a guy in to run the branch. Brand new guy. He's taking over for a guy that was there for 20 years. Well, they hired a banker, okay, which, I was one of those. So, but they hired a banker, and they made him work the dock, work the sales desk, have sales accounts, and all of this. It was like a 1.5 year process grooming him to put him in the role, because there's so many different things that kind of can, if you don't get it, you don't get it, right? So as we talk about some of the things maybe that I'd like to just start by talking about some of the things that you've learned have been an effective way to build your brand. And I think obviously the primary one that would come to mind, I would think, would be Shepards of Men. Which is fantastic. So definitely think about that. But also, NFIB, okay? Before you, I'd never heard of it. Mm-hmm. And obviously they're a large organization. So that there's something, not to say, hey, figure it out, NFIB, but there's something to be said about, wait a second, you're so big, you're doing so many great things, but all the people that I've referred to you for NFIB, none of them have heard of NFIB before. So just to talk a little bit about what your perspective is on effectively building a brand.
Yeah, that's a great question, and you're right on the fact that the more diverse your background is, I think obviously it just lends itself to you being more well-rounded and just understanding things. I mean, as you're talking about that example, some of the most successful companies in the world that I'm aware of that have been, second, third, and fourth generation companies have some kind of process like that, where it's like, you're not just going to take over the company, because typically when that happens, if the second or the third generation just, screw it up,
They don't appreciate it.
They don't, so, working your way through each step. And that's something I got to do on a much smaller scale, because my dad has a small business, but I worked, from the time I was old enough to be out there, I was out there. And then I started having responsibilities, and they increased as I got older. But it was and he wasn't grooming me to take over the company.
Right.
He was just allowing me to learn. So if I made that decision, I could. But it still helped me in other endeavors regardless. So, and to appreciate when you get in positions of leadership and you own your own company, and you have other people in different roles, it helps you, stay humble and understand that everybody's important. Everybody in that organization is important. If it wasn't for each piece, it wouldn't work.
Right.
So everybody's valuable. But as far as the marketing and the branding specifically, I think it starts with your own personal brand. Who you are as a person.
Yeah.
It goes a long ways. And obviously, if nobody knows who you are, it doesn't really matter who you are. Listen to what I'm saying here. Like, it doesn't, if you just sit at home, if you're a recluse, you could be the highest integrity, highest character guy in the world. You're not really influencing anybody.
Right. So it matters, but you don't have impact.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So it does matter. If you want to be a recluse, just be a really good one, be a good dude either way. Yeah. But if you want to have influence and impact, then you can do that positively or negatively. And this is a lot of what we talk about in our Men Reforged program, is we build influential men from the inside out. But it's because we understand that men are called to be leaders, and you're going to influence. So we want to develop that character and develop that integrity. But as far as like your example of NFIB, I had never heard of them either.
Yeah.
Until I did, but it wasn't like, McDonald's or Nike or something like that, like they've always been there, right. But they've been around for 80 years. Yeah. And they are a voice of small business, which is an environment that I've been in for a lot of years. Mm-hmm. Now, once I started digging into it, I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that. I've seen the, the sticker on the doors or whatever, the plaques, but I still didn't really know much about them until I initiated that research. So I think, at the risk of sounding overly confident, I think NFIB did a good job of putting someone in a position, myself, as well as others throughout the country,
sure,
that have a reputation of high integrity and character, that have strong networks, that can go out and spread the word, the message, and the work that NFIB does. So it's kind of a combination. Like, I get the benefit of being able to represent an amazing organization that does really great work. That organization gets the benefit of having me represent them and be the face of their organization because of the way I carry myself and the way I live my life. So ultimately, and the same thing with Shepards of Men, the same thing with Free Agency, same thing with what y'all do at Armor. The reason, I believe one of the reasons that Armor has been so successful so quickly is because people know what Paul says about. People know what Steve Pickett, whoever it is,
right.
Whoever the people are involved, they know what you're about as a person, right? So any brand is going to start small in your local community, and right. then it'll ripple out from there. So if you don't already have that reputation of what you do, whatever Paul's doing, it's got to be good, right? I mean, that's the truth, right? It's the same for me, and I don't mind saying that. It's not an arrogant thing. It's because it doesn't come from me. What we did with Shepards of Men was not something that we're like, hey, let's come up with this idea that we can make money from. Never has been. The money's always been a byproduct.
Right.
The Shepards of Men idea came to us, was given to us. That's my belief. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. Right. I don't know your audience. They can believe whatever they want to believe.
Sure.
But we believe that message was given to us to share. Yeah. And as we have grown, we have seen confirmation of that through branding. Even the little stuff. So maybe it cut me off if I'm going too deep into this, but like Men Reforged, for instance. Mm-hmm. How'd that name come to us? I don't know. It just did. But then we realized when you put it together, MR is Mr. and that may sound silly to some people, but if you work in branding, there's a lot of little silly things that seem so like insignificant, but are actually very significant.
Yeah.
When we were building, we have an ethos that we teach, which is basically the six ethos that's a framework for building influential men. We spent hours and hours and hours developing that because we felt like it was time to have a coaching program. It was literally a year later almost, maybe not quite, we were about to have our first live event, and JP reached out and said, hey, do you realize that along this time, part of our message was, we're basically fighting this passive male syndrome that's going on. So we're always talking about, we got to kill off the passive male, And he's like, you realize if you rearrange this, it spells active?
Yeah.
So for us, we're not like, oh, that's just coincidence. No, it's not. This was all, this is all planned.
Ordained.
Ordained, yeah. So and
let me interject real quick. So I love what you said about a personal brand. Yeah. And the truth is that's when it comes to your family, we'll say the parents, certainly the head of the household, which you could say the male, but
that's what I would say.
Together, there is, clearly there's leadership in the household, and I think it's evidenced in many places, specifically scripture that talks about who should be the head of the household. However, it's kind of like that whole Mike Tyson thing, everything's great until you get punched in the face. And you're like, hey, I'm the man. And then you get married and you live that life, and you're like, it doesn't work
honey, you want to do this?
like that,
Yeah.
So you do have to, but the point is the heads of the household have to decide, who do we want to be? Mm-hmm. What do we want our family to be? And that's personal brand. Mm-hmm. Before you start getting involved in the community, and maybe then hopefully because of the personal brand that you decided you want to have, you have children that are, whenever you are interacting and meeting new people, like, you know what, your kids are a blessing. They bring joy, and this is man, I'm so impressed by. Well, praise God, right? Because there's just a little bit that we have to play in it, and a lot that he does. But the point is, it starts with that personal brand from the family. Mm-hmm. Same thing with the company, and I think that's really, really important, because it's easy to get so excited and fired up about how big things can be. And that's something to be excited about. Have a dream, have a vision. If you don't, then you're not going to get very far. But we skip over some steps. And then whenever we get to having some things in place, it's easy to fall down, because the foundation of a personal brand isn't there, So I love that. Yep. So great point.
Well, and that's true. And you think about, like, this is a sexy brand. A lot of people think about branding, and they're just like, oh, what does the logo look like? Well, yeah. You want to have something that's appealing, right? Sure. And that's a sexy brand that y'all created, but that's won't stand the test of time if there's nothing behind it.
Right.
Right. And that's exactly the point we're making right now is I think we've got some cool logos in our different companies, I think we do. But the fact of the matter is, people don't think the logo's cool first. They see how we do business, and then they're like, okay, and that's an attractive branding, marketing, so just wrapping your truck doesn't make you a good business.
No,
right?
Hopefully there's involvement in the community, there's experiences that the customers have had, and they're talking in their neighborhoods, and then they see the brand.
Then they're recognizing
it. Oh yeah, that's, Margaret had her,
the idea is to have them have the conversation when they see it. Like when they see one of your wrap trucks go by, for them to go talk to their neighbor about how awesome you guys are.
Yeah.
That's not the other way around. Not like, how cool is that sticker?
Yeah. Let me Google the sticker.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the personal brand, the inner workings, being so important. So the kind of you've hit on it a little bit, but let's talk some about the direction or the impact that social media is playing in your brand development and in marketing.
So I was off social media for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. I'm not a huge fan of social media personally. Yeah. Just on a personal, individual level, I'm not a huge fan of it. I think it can be a huge distraction.
Yeah.
I think it can there's just so many doors that you can be open to easily, and we won't get into all that. But from a business perspective, it's the world we live in, and it's not just necessary; it's almost required if you want to scale at any kind of level, right? If you just want to be handyman that has does screen door installs for your neighbors, probably don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, word of mouth, have enough to do to maybe feed your family.
Yep. But if you want to have any kind of significant size, business, and brand, then it's just where we are nowadays, So as we started Shepards of Men, I was encouraged by the other guys to get myself back on social media, and I did it reluctantly. They had to push me for a bit because I was so good with not being on there. Like I had spent a decade not having it in my life, and I didn't miss it.
Yeah. Well, let me say I agree with you. There's also a part of sometimes it's easier to just not have access to things than it is to learn how to be mature with those things.
That's
right?
Exactly right.
So gun control.
Yep.
Hey, let's step into it. So should we have guns? They're dangerous. Well, they can be.
You don't know how to use them.
If you aren't disciplined and learn how to use them. So same thing. And I'm not saying that it's not a difficult and maybe dangerous path sometimes, because there's lots of stuff that you can get into through the internet and through social media. But the point is, how are you using it? Are you mature in the use of it to be able to be effective?
No, you're 100% right. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's the truth. Anything, it is the easiest way to not do something is just separate yourself from it. But, can you just discipline yourself and create barriers there? And that's probably the better route to go because it is an amazing tool.
Right.
It is an amazing tool. And it has been super significant for free agency home services. It was, for the longest time, the only way that I was generating business. We didn't do any traditional advertising or anything like that. We were literally doing Facebook posts, and I was out hustling the networking sites, and when I say hustling, I mean just connecting with people, and we don't have to necessarily go down this road, but there is a branding aspect to social media, which is kind of like broad brushstroke, to get your name out there and your brand out there and everything else. But there's also, the cool thing about it that I've seen is there's a personal connection option on there too. So like when we would see people that needed to have work done, it wasn't just like we were one of the 7,000 other contractors that commented on their post. I would reach out to them individually through messaging, and have it start a dialogue with them, a conversation. And I found that to be very effective. Now,
there's a lot more work to be done there, right? Though, so it's nice to be able to say, hey, call us, but it takes extra time. But that's what's effective, right?
It is, and it's hard to scale that. You start going, well, I can't do this forever, and I can't, until you. There are options now, the bots and all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of automated stuff that's not necessarily bad. There's some garbage out there, but there's some things that are really good that are automated that can engage your customer base. But yeah, and then from the our coaching program and our podcast, obviously, to distribute information and announcements about stuff coming up and things like that. It's kind of hard to beat when you literally have a free platform, or multiple free. You think about Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. We don't do Snapchat. I don't even really know anything about Snapchat, but there's plenty of options to get in front of eyeballs. And not just get in front of them, but to actually connect with them if you're intentional about it. And I think the intentionality is really the difference maker, because you can also get lost in just a sea of, smashing things in your face.
Because we've had some involvement with different business groups and things like that, and it can be great, but you do have to have the resources and meaning the capacity, not just the finances, to be able to make sure that you're responding to alerts and things like that. Robert, I'm curious, does anything come to mind for you when we talk about the importance of not just a broad brushstroke, but when it comes to social media, but also a more, specific kind of intentionally direct type of approach to social media?
No, I think, you hit it perfectly on the head. I think with social media or branding, whether it's podcasting, video, marketing, consistency is really where most all people fail.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it year after year after year. They'll put out a wonderful podcast or wonderful video, wonderful graphic, but they can't keep it up. People have this expectation. I think that's the world we live in, where I want to do the least amount of work to get all these results, and they don't see those successful people, whether it's motivational speaker or some guru. They don't see the 20 years of no views and no money. And you can put out amazing stuff. It may take 10 podcasts. It may take 100. It may never happen, but you've got to be consistent with it. So whether it's TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, it is really just about consistency in your overall brand, and just keeping it going over and over and over again with expectations that you're just going to have to kind of hustle a little bit for a while. And that's just the nature of the business. Yeah. Some people they go viral immediately, and it is what it is, but that's not everybody.
Well, it's like in anything, there's always that exception. But correct me if I'm wrong. You're also, because you know about this stuff more than I do, you're also fighting an algorithm or continually adapting to an algorithm depending on the platform. So my understanding is that the consistency goes a long ways towards getting you in front of people, because we'd look at, be like, we got this many thousands of followers on Facebook, but we only have 5 likes on that post. Well, they're not all seeing it.
Yeah.
Because so there's a lot more to it, and it was because we were inconsistent with posts. We were inconsistent, and Facebook's a company just like everybody else. They're like, we want eyeballs to stick. Mm-hmm. So if you're not consistently on there doing it, they're like, you're not getting people to stick. They're not watching. So we're not going to put you at the top of the algorithm for people to see. Am I pretty accurate on that?
I mean, I remember 10 years ago it was the thing. If you followed someone on Facebook, you saw their post.
Right.
But when they started changing things, to user behavior and what have you, it changed things a lot. Like you said, 1,000 likes, only 5 people saw your post. Every business owner's been there now.
It's so frustrating.
Or you'll put out something, you're like, this is good content, and no one sees it, and you're devastated. But sometimes too, it's the quality of the content too. I mean, it needs to be quality content. A roofing company thinks, well, we need to have pictures of roofs every day. Nope.
Right.
Some of the most successful don't have a single picture of a roof. So it really is about quality, and sometimes people focus on quality for them. Armor Exteriors, our target market is not the people that work here. I'm sure with your businesses, it's not the people that work there. But unfortunately, a lot of business owners get into this mindset of, oh, I love this. Well, you're not buying from yourself. Right. So you have to be able to, you've got to be able to think about what your consumers would want, who your actual market is, and creating good content for them, consistent content for them, and realizing that if you find something that works right now, today, you better be thinking about what's going to be working in 6 months, because I can assure you, as soon as you figure it out, it changes, whether that's with Google or Facebook. It just is, because they're businesses. They've got to continue monetizing.
Yeah. Right? Robert's always coming to me and saying, hey, we need more content. We need 3 more videos today. I'm like, oh, okay. Sounds good. Let's do it. And then we, okay, well, we're not done. We're going to schedule another day, Friday. Okay. All right. So, but keeping that consistency.
Yeah.
So I hear some.
Can I just say something on that real quick? Because what you figured out and what we've now figured out, I think we knew this before, we knew this before. We just didn't have any funds in the bank for our program, our coaching program. Because like I said, we were just distributing a free podcast for the longest time. But if you want to actually be effective on social media, hire someone that is good at that and turn that over to them. Because I will tell you, from someone that has tried to do it on their own, that's not my sweet spot. Yeah. That's not my strength.
Well, coming from a guy who didn't want to be on it.
I don't even want to be on there. Yeah. I don't even like it, but it's important and it's necessary. And you have Robert handling that for you, which is brilliant. We have a guy named Chris doing ours now. And I'm telling you, it's one of the best decisions we ever made. Yes, it's an investment, but it will pay you back tenfold. And it is just, if you want it to actually work, you can either spin your wheels trying to figure it out on your own and doing what you think is cool and what you like and nobody's seeing it, or you can hire somebody that actually understands how it works and you can get results from your efforts, and you won't have to spend as much time doing it.
So some key things that I've thought that we've talked about. We talked about personal brand. Mm-hmm. We talked about consistency. We talked about quality. Some good things to kind of think through if we're really trying to fine tune our our marketing and our brand development. I do want to take a little bit of time with what you've been doing with NFIB. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing small business owners right now?
Okay, so I ask this question every time I meet with a new small business owner. Like, what are your top concerns on the federal level? What are your top concerns on the state level? Mm-hmm. By far, right now, January 2023, I'd say the highest percentage answer is inflation.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. Just about every industry, if not every industry, is affected by it, either directly or indirectly. Yep. I mean, you're affected by it because supplies cost 2 or 3 times more than they used to.
Yeah. I mean, we just got a notification from one of our manufacturers last week. Hey, guess what? February 1st, we're going up in pricing. We're talking about 6%, 12%, 15%. So yeah, I get fired up about that. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? That whenever that's dropped on a company, not just us, but any company, it's not like, oh yay, prices are going up. That means we'll make more money. No, I mean, we have to stay competitive somehow, right? Yeah. And so, it's just like, hey, guess what? If you want to work with us, then you have to sell for more. If you want to keep your business open with the margins that you need. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big problem.
The good news is everybody has to adapt. Mm-hmm. So you should see that the market pricing change, it goes up as well. But there's always that time frame of like, who's going to stay at their current prices and kind of eat the hit a little bit, who's going to go ahead and increase, and then how much does this affect my reputation? Because if I'm going to a house and I've already adjusted my pricing because of the new supply pricing and I'm higher, but XYZ company comes in behind me, they haven't adjusted their pricing, then I look like I'm way overcharging, which I'm really not. Mm-hmm. They're just losing money right now because they haven't made that adjustment yet. So it's tough to translate that to your customer base. It really is. And I think the best way to do it, just personal opinion, is to be very transparent about it.
Yeah.
Just tell them, like, this is what I've always done. Over the last couple of years, as everybody knows, stuff has gone up consistently. In the gutter world, it was just constant increases, every couple of months in aluminum or whatever. Yeah. And we just tell people, like, hey, it cost us this much more today than it did yesterday,
So inflation.
Yep. Inflation. Another big one, the taxes is always something that everybody is, nobody likes paying. Now, I'm one of those people that will admit, like, taxes are good. We need to have them. I don't want to go out and fix the road.
Right.
So they're necessary. Obviously, they can get out of hand, but I will tell you some great work that NFIB has done recently with the Inflation Reduction Act, so appropriately named, that passed last fall. Sorry, we're not getting political on here. There were a number of, obviously, many big bills. There are extra things that nobody's talking about, just pork that they're trying to push through. That is not uncommon. This administration's big bill was the Build Back Better Act / Inflation Reduction Act. In that, specifically for small business, there were a number of different tax increases. There was limits on there's a 20% small business deduction. For any of y'all that are small business owners that aren't familiar with that, Section 199A. It's online, like 13 of your form or whatever. Just check with your CPA. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. It is still there currently. That's something that NFIB got pushed through for small business back in 2019. It originally was only for big business, but this bill was trying to limit that deduction. But you think about what 20% of your annual revenue is. That is a big deduction for most people. I mean, if you're not getting that, it makes a difference. So it's there now, but it has a shelf life of, I think, 2025. Okay. So we're still working and lobbying to keep that around permanently, but there's obviously pushback.
So the name of it again? Or that line?
It is Section 199A.
Section 199A.
And I think it's on line 13, if I'm not mistaken, on your tax form. But it's 20% small business deduction. Check with your CPA.
Yeah.
That was one thing that we were able to get off of that bill. So it's still there. They were. Okay. Another big one was small business surtax. I think it's currently 3.8%. They were trying to increase it not to 11%, by 11%.
Oh.
An additional 11%. So again, think about what your annual revenue is, and 11% of that was going to be just one of the new taxes. So the work that NFIB did, campaign with our members, petition signed with our members, we got in front of Congress back in August of 2022, and we got those two things as well as some other tax increases taken out of that bill before it passed. So that's the kind of work that we do. at NFIB is literally protect small business and be a voice of small business, but we're the microphone, right? The voice is really the small business owners that are going, we have ballots that they vote on and say, no, we don't want this, or we do want that, we do want that. And then every stance we take is that collective voice. And we say, this is what your constituents are saying, right? And thankfully, we haven't still enough brain cells in D.C. to go, the only way you keep a job is if you at least 50% of the time or more do what your people want you to do, what they put you in this position to do. Right. So we can still affect change there. But that's a big one on the tax front. And then I'd say third to wrap up on that question is a qualified workforce. Where a lot of small business owners, especially in industries like ours, I don't know if y'all have seen it, but I get this a lot, is like just having qualified employees, and not necessarily even just qualified, but motivated. Mm-hmm. Like there's guys out there that are plenty qualified, guys or girls, but they just don't seem to want to show up. And I think without getting on a political soapbox, there's, more initiatives than ever to not show up. Yeah.
Yeah. So probably some of our listeners are, maybe that haven't heard of NFIB, those few things that you've pointed to, I mean, those can make a big difference, at least understanding and potentially taking advantage of, and maybe having access to the resources that NFIB provides and supporting NFIB, so what's the best way for someone to say, hey, I need to learn more, I need to,
for sure,
to get connected?
So I would say reach out to me personally. Obviously, you can go to NFIB.com, Google NFIB. There's tons of information there. But if you really want to sit down and talk with someone and actually have your voice heard, at least initially on some of this surface level stuff, I don't know if you do like show notes or whatever here, but you can put my contact info there, put my cell number in there, my email or whatever. And you can reach out to me or reach out to Paul, and he can connect us. If you own a small business and you can hear my voice, it doesn't matter what part of the country you're in. Okay. We protect every kind and every size small business, and when I first came on board with NFIB, I was like, is there any kind of like business, if it's publicly traded, that's not our wheelhouse, but anything that's not any privately owned business, whether it's huge or tiny, whether you're literally a guy working out of a garage, sole proprietor, LLC, any of that stuff. So, yeah, reach out to me and I can go through, again, more detail what NFIB does and how you can have your voice heard, because obviously we want every small business owner to be able to be involved and to have their voice heard. And quite frankly, we're far more interested in another voting member than we are a certain dollar amount. There are dues for NFIB, but they are not a set amount like a lot of organizations. We leave that up to each member. Yeah. Basically, what I always ask people is like, what's the most you could do without hurting your business? Do that. Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome. There's not a lot of opportunities out there to be connected with something that's really going to impact your business, your family, your community, where it's kind of, hey, it's up to you. Yeah. Lots of times like, well, deal with it. This is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some out there that are like, wow.
Yeah. Well, Cameron, we've filled up some great time together, and hopefully we'll roll a little bit after here just to see if we can pick up anything else. But
sure.
Thank you so much for your time, and I think we've covered a broad amount of information that's really helpful both personally and to business and politically even. And so, we went there. So thanks again, Cameron Brown, everybody. Thanks for being with us. And Robert, always thank you for everything you do to put things together in the back end. And till next time, thank you, everybody.